Good to have you with us this morning. Market players are closely monitoring the latest out of the Middle East, with the Israeli military carrying out strikes inside Iran early this morning. These moves are largely being cited as retaliation for last week's barrage of missiles and drones launched by Iran into Israel. There are two ways for investors to look at these developments. On the one hand, it's a dangerous reminder of the week's worth of tensions we've seen following Israel's strike on an Iranian compound in Syria. But with media in each country appearing to downplay the severity of this latest incident, some observers are hopeful both sides are trying to de-escalate the situation. For example, many analysts have suggested Iran's attack last weekend was designed to look spectacular while keeping death and destruction to a minimum. In this case, Israel seems to have targeted several military bases in Iran, as well as some key nuclear facilities. But based on the reports we've seen so far, the attack seemed limited. Meanwhile, as we watch tension levels between the two nations, there is a broader dialogue around how these attacks impact the thinking of other nations in the region, as well as how the relationship between Israel and the U.S., as well as other allies, is unfolding. G7 foreign ministers, including Canada's Melanie Joly, were already meeting today in Italy and have urged de-escalation. To piece all of this together, we're joined in studio by David Oliver, a business strategist who tracks geopolitical developments. He's the founder of Minerva Strategy. David, nice to see you. As you saw these headlines last night and knowing what we know, call it 12 hours later, what's your assessment of what has happened here?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because, of course, when we saw the initial reports about 11 o'clock, I think, our time last night, which would have been about 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning local time, well, the question is, there's going to be a much bigger attack, you know, clearly in response to everything that happened over the weekend in terms of Iran's attack on Israel. Wake up this morning and we see it looks very limited. Actually, we've got still very sketchy reports as to exactly what has been attacked. We understand these facilities in Isfahan, which includes a military base, but also nuclear facilities, which we believe weren't attacked. I think that's been confirmed by the IEA. But it seems very limited. We're talking about one missile, one ballistic missile, reports of maybe 3 drones, and both sides, as you said, really playing it down. So at the moment, it looks like a much more limited event. And obviously, we've seen the reaction in the markets, which particularly the oil market spiked initially, has now come back down. So I guess the G7 leaders that are meeting in Italy, as you referenced, are probably going to be feeling better about things now versus where they probably were about 7 or 8 hours ago. Well,
let's try to piece together how all sides are thinking through this situation, just starting with both Israel and Iran. We mentioned weeks of tension. What do you think has been a consideration for both sides with this recent round of attacks?
So, I mean, the wide analysis, obviously, after the Iranian attack was, which side do you believe? Iran, it was a big attack in terms of numbers, but then ultimately it was an attack that was entirely thwarted. And this developing analysis that kind of did Iran, you know, was it signaling rather than meaning to cause real damage? Of course, some people say if you launch 300 projectiles at another country, that's still quite a risky move. On the Israeli side, it's all about the Israeli politics and the very fracturing coalition around Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet. We've seen reports of Benny Gantz, for example, coming out this morning and saying quite derogatory comments about what's happened today versus how he's trying to hold that coalition together. And I think this is what the US are probably very nervous about, is what actually happens in terms of a wider response.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that part as well, in terms of, you know, because you've seen a lot of headlines recently about a frayed relationship between Netanyahu and Joe Biden. But as the U.S. is observing this and trying to figure out where their place is in this whole back and forth, what do you think the latest view is?
So I think as of this morning, the US messages after the attack last week was very clear. I think their message to Netanyahu was, take this as a win. And let's have some calm. I think Israel signalled, thanks very much, but we'll do what we want, thanks very much, and we'll respond how we choose to respond. If this is just the response, the US, I think, will be relatively, it seems an odd phrase to use, but will be relatively pleased. It's been a muted response if this is it. And I think that's going to be the main thing the US are looking for. The most sensitive point, I think we're all watching still, is what happens in Lebanon and what happens. There are attacks already going on between Israel and Hezbollah, but that's the next big flashpoint that I think everybody are worried about in terms of a bigger conflagration. So, you know, yes, we've had these direct exchanges between Israel and Iran, which are unprecedented in some ways. But actually, I think still the biggest worry for an escalatory point is that point in the northern border in Israel and Lebanon.
And for, let's say, Israel's allies who are observing nation-by-nation strategy in the Middle East right now, especially when we're talking about these latest attacks involving flyovers, with countries with the different missiles. What do we know about that part of the political story right now?
Yeah, I mean, officially, of course, we understand that it was the UK, the US, the US, the UK, and other allied countries that responded to the Israeli attack. We also know that Saudi, UAE, and of course Jordan, whose airspace that a lot of these projectiles flew over, also took part, but unofficially and not confirming that. Jordan have since said anything that flies over airspace, we're going to shoot down, implying whether it's Israeli, Iranian, frankly, anybody else's. I think this is the nervousness around the Arab states. Essentially still comes back to, in some ways, the US view, which is trying to do anything to stop any further destabilization of the region. And I think that's what everybody is focused on at the moment.
And then the real-time measurement of that can be the markets, perhaps the oil market, the most obvious place to go. And we did initially see a spike in crude prices overnight as people were adjusting to some of the headlines. But we were mentioning earlier oil prices tapering off this morning. You could add to that we've actually come off the recent peak because there's a view that there's less of a geopolitical premium because people sort of have perceived that risk as easing somewhat. What was your assessment?
So oil spiked and came down because it spiked because, we were all asking last night, how big is this thing going to be? It then came down because we realised not as big as we might have been worried about 7 or 8 hours ago. The big question is going to be what happens now. I just saw Geeta Gopinath being interviewed by your colleagues in Washington. The IMF are very worried about oil getting anywhere near $100 a barrel because that's going to put huge inflationary pressures back in the economy. What would lead to $100 a barrel? In this case, further destabilization and particularly activity around the Strait of Hormuz, which is where 1/5 of the world's oil goes through. If we see Iranian activity around the Strait of Hormuz that potentially starts to restrict supplies there, that's where we might start to see things edging up again and ticking up again.